Hello, everyone. Welcome to the fourth of the peer-to-peer community self-consumption transactive energy in Latin America. We are just going to wait a few more seconds before starting. We have almost 90 people connected right now, and it's great to see some familiar names and faces joining this event today. Right. So this is the fourth meeting of the Global Observatory on Peer-to-Peer Energy Trading by the users TCP from the International Energy Agency. This event is organized by University EIA in Medellin, Colombia. My name is Juan Manuel España. Some of you already know me. I'm the director of the Transactive Energy Colombia initiative. I'm a researcher at EIA University here in Medellin, and I'm very happy to host this event today. We are very excited to be the country organizer of this new meeting of the observatory, and we are looking forward to all the discussions and presentations that we're going to have over the next couple of days. I want to guide you through the agenda for today. First of all, we're going to have an opening presentation by Julián Rojas from the Ministry of Mines and Energy in Colombia. Then at 9:30, we're in Colombia, 3:30 p.m. in UK. We're going to have a presentation by Dr. Brian Motherway from the International Energy Agency. Then at 9:40, we are going to have sorry, I mixed the times. At 9:30, we're going to have a presentation by UNEP, and then we're going to have a first networking session that is going to last 20 minutes. I'm going to explain you a little bit how to make the best of this networking session. At 10 a.m., right after the first networking session, we're going to have our first panel with the task sub leaders, with the sub-task leaders, sorry, from the Global Observatory. We're going to be discussing the Colombian study case. Then we're going to have the second networking session at 10:45 a.m. After this networking session, we're going to have a few presentations on case studies in Latin America. And at the end of our event today, we're going to have a second panel with some key speakers from all around Latin America. And for our closing presentation, is going to be in charge Professor David Shipworth from UCL. So about the platform that we're using today, it's called Remo. Some of you might already know it. It's a great platform for interact with our participants. I'm going to first present you how the presentation mode works, which is the one you are currently looking at. At the right, you can use either the chat for chatting with all the participants, or you can go to the Q&A button on the right for you to formulate questions to the speakers or to the panelists or to the coordination team of the event. The conversation mode for those of you who joined the event before starting this presentation is the one you are looking at the screen right now. As you can see, there is a layout of different tables. Once we finish with the presentations, you are going to be automatically taken to this conversation mode, and you can join different tables by double clicking on a chair or a table. You see on the left that there are different floors in case that the first floor is full, or you can just move around the floors and move around the tables, try to connect with other participants. You'll see the names of some of them, the pictures. So we strongly encourage you to engage and make the best of this platform for opening discussions on different topics related to our event and to the Global Observatory. And I'm pretty sure that nice connections and potentially new ideas can come out of this. While you are in the conversation mode and when you join a table, you can turn off your camera and turn off your your camera and turn on your microphone, and then you'll see the cameras from other participants that are also in that table. So now moving on to our first presentation of the day is going to be in charge Julián Antonio Rojas. He's the head of business and regulatory affairs at the Ministry of Mines and Energy of Colombia. So a warm welcome to Julián, and thanks for joining us today and for opening this event. We are just waiting for Julián to join.
Thank you, Juan Manuel. Hi, everyone. Do you hear me now?
We can hear you well, Julián. Good morning. Thanks for joining.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen.
Please.
Okay, now I hope you see my screen, right? Okay, so good morning, everyone. Greetings from Colombia. Thank you very much for the invitation to open this wonderful event. And a special greeting to Juan Manuel. It is important to begin this exposition by remarking the news that Colombia has been accepted in the IEA. And this is something that recognizes and supports the leadership of our country in the energy transition. Well, in this short presentation, we would like to talk about the energy transition in Colombia, the process we have followed, and the first very important results we have had. In addition, we will talk about some perspectives of the future regarding the users' participation in the energy markets. So, first of all, we will like to tell you about our generation matrix composition. And as you can see here, we have one of the world's cleanest generation matrix with a hydrothermal composition that accounts 70% of hydro and 30% of thermal generation installed capacity. However, this hydro dependence makes us also vulnerable to climate phenomena as the El Niño Southern Oscillation. In that way, every 3 to 4 years, we see low reservoir levels and high spot prices. In general, we have a stress system. So having this in mind, it is important to note that Colombia has a huge potential for renewable development. Apart from the huge quantity of hydro resources, we have a wind speed in the northern part of our country in La Guajira region that is double than the world average, and a solar radiation that is also above the world average. Due to all these efforts we have made in energy transition, the World Energy Council said that we are in the second place. We are the second country in Latin America with a great progress toward the energy transition. And we will tell you some of the reasons the WEC has classified us in the second place. Okay. In 2019, we organized and executed 2 auctions in which for the first time we were awarded renewable projects. In 2018, we had less than 50 megawatts of renewable installed capacity, and with these auctions, we awarded more than 2,500 megawatts, which are going to begin operations next year. These projects represent more than 6,000 jobs and more than $2,000 million in investments. In late 2020 and this year, we have been inaugurating more and more solar projects all over the country. We are pursuing the goal of 1,000 megawatts installed and the first wind project installed this year. All these projects will bear us to a 12% of renewable participation in our generation matrix. But we have not stopped there. This year in October, we plan to execute a new renewable auction, a new tender, for projects to begin operations in January 2023. We have seen in the planning unit more than 5,800 megawatts of solar projects, which are waiting for a financial instrument like our auction to continue their development. We plan this new auction as an instrument for economic reactivation after the COVID-19 crisis. This new auction will bear us more than 6.8 billion in investments and more than 32,000 jobs. We have also made new changes in our in our rules of assigning connection capacity. This was a problem that we have been having since 2016 maybe, but now with Craig resolution, we plan to have a solution to this topic. In the same way, we are considering another important challenge. This challenge is bringing electricity to people who nowadays don't have this public service. In that way, we have the goal of having 100 and 1,000 new electric users in our remote areas, and we are roughly half the path. We have brought electricity to more than 50,000 families, and it is remarkable that these renewable projects, specifically solar projects, have been very important in this way. This process has been made typically with diesel plants, but now with these panels in each house, we have found a very interesting way to give electricity to these new users. In the same way, we are considering and boosting new types of energy. Last Saturday, we enacted the Energy Transition Law, where you can find incentives for these three new sources: geothermal, hydrogen, and offshore wind. We have now seen some pilots of geothermal projects, pilots that have been started in Llanos Orientales with Parex and Ecopetrol support. And we are developing our hydrogen roadmap with IDB support that will be presented in the next few weeks, the first results. And finally, in offshore wind, we are also developing our roadmap, in this case with World Bank supports. And this roadmap will help us to analyze which areas are properly for offshore wind development, how we are going to assign these areas, and this is going to be joint work with all the entities that are responsible for this topic. Okay, so now I'm going to talk about a little bit about the role of users in energy transition and how the Ministry of Mines and Energy sees this and how this can be a joint work. Okay, currently we are entering a new area in which energy prosumers of all shapes and sizes are taking over. Today, worldwide, many houses and buildings have photovoltaic installations and combine them with home storage systems, electric vehicle charging stations, and smart energy management systems to optimize the use of the different assets according to price signals and grid requirements. That's why in Colombia, as part of the energy transition process, we have considered essential that end users are informed and have access to information that allows them to make better decisions. To attain this interest, the government set a target for 2030 to have 75% of users in the interconnected national system with advanced metering infrastructure, for which the Regulatory Commission published 2 draft resolutions in 2020 to determine the responsibilities of network operators, retailers, and users regarding the massification of AMI. as well as the deadlines, stages, and conditions for deployment. The final regulation of this subject is expected to be published in the upcoming weeks. To move forward the massifications of AMI, there is an estimated investment of $1,500 that is going to be very important to the economic reactivation after the COVID-19 crisis. Modernization of energy markets will lead to an active participation of the demand. The demand will not be simply a price taker, as is nowadays, and also with AMI, new opportunities will arise. Final users will be able to have more information about energy prices and their own consumption. The energy transition will lead to an increase in distributed energy resources incorporation to the grid. Demand response, distributed generation, electric vehicles, and others will provide benefits to the grid and will change the market's operation. We will finally close with this slide, and as a complement to what's led by the sector, I would like to highlight how the joint work with the initiative of the EIA University will help us to move forward a user-centered approach. The joint work will allow the ministry to understand the key challenges and opportunities that arise from integrating user-centered energy systems as a key enabler of the energy transition, and also will provide a platform for the ministry to engage with different national and international stakeholders that are in the right position to fit in the national discussion around energy transition. Thanks for your attention. This is what we want to show about the energy transition in the Ministry of Mines and Energy and in Colombia.
Thank you very much for this presentation. Very happy to see that you highlighted the work that the ministry is going to be doing with EIA University under this Transactive Energy Colombia initiative. And I think many of the Colombians who would agree that these are very exciting moments for the energy transition in Colombia with the latest energy transition law and all the work that's been done by the regulator and by the ministry and in general by the sector. Thanks a lot, Julián. Now I would like to welcome Dr. Brian Motherway. Just give me a second for the introduction. Dr. Brian, Agency Division at the International Energy Agency. Hello, Dr. Brian. Welcome to this event. I'm going to share my screen with your presentation. Okay.
Thank you, Juan Manuel, and thank you for the invitation to join you. And greetings to you all from the afternoon time here in Paris. And thank you, Julián, also for giving such a great presentation and overview of all of the exciting things that are happening in Colombia right now. And as Julián said at the start, we're particularly pleased at this time to be welcoming Colombia into the IEA family and moving towards full membership. So it's a great time to be talking about these things. So I want to set the scene with a bit of the global context in terms of how we see things. And I'm delighted to be here. Several of my colleagues are here also. We're very happy to continue the conversation with all of you on this important topic. Juan Manuel, if you could go to the next slide, please. Obviously, we're here at a time when there's a lot of talk about higher levels of ambition for decarbonization of our electricity and our energy systems generally. But so far, we are not on the right track as far as emissions are concerned. After a dip in 2020 because of the damage done to our economies and to all of our lives by COVID, we've seen a rebound in both energy demand and CO2 emissions related to that in 2021. So we really need to see much more emphasis on turning the ambition that governments are stating into real action and real short-term action that can really get us to turn the corner and start dramatically lowering emissions related to energy. Next slide, please. So it's in this context that we recently published the IEA's roadmap to net zero energy systems by 2050. This is one way of getting to net zero. I'm sure there are many others and we can discuss that, but this shows the kind of actions and strong and urgent actions that will be required, particularly led by governments, investors, and of course all of us as energy consumers, if we are to start moving towards delivering net zero by 2050. You can see it starts now in terms of an immediate move to build no more unabated coal plants, no new oil and gas fields necessary based on the trajectory of future demand. And then we start to see a number of really important milestones coming very quickly. And what I want to emphasize is the decade we are in now, 2020 to 2030, is the crucial decade if we are to have any chance to get to net zero by 2050. Next slide, please, Juan Manuel. And you see that here in some of the key actions we see that we need to get to in this decade. From the current rate of build of solar and wind, exciting though it is to see such a large scale and to see prices coming down, we need to be 4 times that rate by the end of that decade. Equally, even though we see electric vehicle sales growing very rapidly in many parts of the world, we need to go to nearly 20 times that by the end of the decade. And as far as energy efficiency is concerned, currently we're improving the global efficiency of the energy system in intensity terms by about 1.5% a year. We need to triple that to be hitting 4% a year in this decade. So all of these show how urgent it is that we step up our rate of progress and our policy implementation, investment and action on clean energy across the energy system. Next slide, please. In my view, the key opportunity to deliver the kind of policies and actions we need to deliver on that goal comes from digitalization. We're seeing a global transformation of energy systems, particularly electricity systems, where we're no longer talking about old-fashioned one-sided supply matching demand, unidirectional flows, very little communication between supply and demand side. We're seeing a very different type of grid emerging in every part of the world, where we see much more interconnectivity, much better control and optimization, much better flow of data and information. And we're seeing huge new opportunities to do several things. First of all, we can make energy use more efficient in businesses, in homes, in industry. We can optimize it for better comfort, better convenience, and of course, lower costs. But more crucially than that, we can start thinking about systems rather than just end use. When we think about energy efficiency, when we think about clean energy, we can think in a systems approach where we're making the optimal use of supply side clean resources like solar, wind, hydro, others when they're available, and we're optimizing that with demand in a way that is much more dynamic, has much more emphasis on demand side flexibility than we've seen in grids in the past, and therefore is bringing overall costs down as well as enhancing the cleanness of the energy system, the user experience, and the overall economic efficiency. It's important to stress that if we want to deliver on this massive net zero goal we have set ourselves, we really do need to lead with energy efficiency. We need to think about lowering the overall cost of investment required by lowering the size of the energy system as much as we can. We need to think about the early actions that are available on the demand side, including investment in smart infrastructure, investment in smart technologies, electric vehicles, and of course, new and retrofitted efficient and smart buildings in all sectors. Of course, the great positive benefit of that is that it can quickly bring benefits to all citizens in terms of job creation, lower bills, more resilient and secure energy systems, as well as many other benefits. Next slide, please, Juan Manuel. So because of this, we in the IEA are really focused on the digital opportunity for energy systems, particularly in relation to smart grids, energy efficiency, and clean energy in electricity systems of the future. We're working in particular in the context of what we call digital demand-driven electricity networks, the 3DEN initiative as we call it. We're working very closely with many governments around the world, including Italy, who have been supporting our work and also discussing this at the G20 table. Just next week, when the G20 energy ministers meet, they will be discussing our analysis of how digital technologies can really drive smart grids, smart cities, and how policies can push investment in the kind of technologies that we need to see to deliver these clean and responsive electricity systems of the future. We're very keen to work with all of you on this. We're very keen to hear your views, hear your experiences. So please do get in touch if you'd like to discuss this work further, share your experiences, and we'd love to extend our network here in terms of engaging with businesses, academics, governments around the world, looking at these really important questions. As Julián emphasized, this is about people as well. This is about all of us as energy consumers, all of us as citizens in societies that are trying to transform the clean energy systems of the future. So we in the EIA are really placing a lot of emphasis on the importance of what we call people-centered clean energy transitions. Next slide, please, Juan Manuel. So earlier this year, we convened the Global Commission on People-Centered Clean Energy Transitions, which includes ministers from around the world, including, of course, the Colombian Minister for Mines and Energy, Minister Mesa Prio, and we're delighted to have him as a key member of our commission. We have energy and climate ministers from large countries, small countries, from energy producers, from energy importers. We also have labor, youth, and other representation, and they are currently discussing making recommendations to governments around the world about what are the practical and immediate action steps that governments can take to make their clean energy transitions more acceptable, more equitable, bring more benefits to people, and make them more likely to succeed and more likely to maximize the benefits for all people. At the end of the day, we must remember that clean energy transitions is not an engineering project. It's a people project. We do clean energy transitions to make people's lives better, to bring energy access to people, to mitigate the worst effects of climate change, and to create a cleaner, more equitable global system of the future based on clean, affordable, and reliable energy. So a focus on people is really important to make sure we put the kind of policies in place that will enhance gender equity, that will enhance social inclusion, that will be a better experience for all of us as citizens and energy consumers as part of our drive towards net zero and clean energy systems of the future. Again, we're very keen to engage with all of you on this. We're identifying best practice around the world in the type of policies and implementation actions that governments can take. We'd love to hear from you so we can help the Global Commission make the best recommendations they can make, which they will be making in just a couple of months' time as an input into COP26 in November. And I will be very keen, of course, to update you when that time comes. Next slide, please, Juan Manuel. So thank you very much for your time today. I've really enjoyed having a chance to talk to you. I hope I can see some of you in the networking events, and my colleagues from the IEA are also here, and we look forward to the discussion. Thank you very much.
Thanks a lot, Brian, for this wonderful presentation. I think just to highlight once again the importance of engaging with the agency and with the 3DM project, and in general with all the participants of this event. We truly believe that collaboration is at the center of these transitions, center on the users. So thanks, Dr. Brian. And now I would like Myriem Touhami. She's the program manager of the Economy Division of the UN Environment Program, or UNEP. Welcome, Myriem.
Hi, good morning, or good afternoon, my time. Can you hear me well?
We can hear you well, yes.
Okay, hi. So let me introduce myself. Sorry. So my name is Myriem Touhami, and I have been a program manager at UNEP for the past 17 years. And I'm delighted to make a presentation today on right after Brian, because the idea, what we're trying to do in this project, is we're trying to take the guidance of IEA, whatever they come up with guidance on policy, on investment, on regulatory, on technology, and try to make it real. And thanks to the Italian ministry, we've received some funding, and then we would like to make real project. And this is why we are launching this call for proposal for pilot projects. So if you can go to the presentation, please.
Yes. Just give me a second, please.
You want me to share my screen, maybe?
Yes, please do. Thanks, Myriem.
Do that. I can see it on my screen.
Yeah. This is I'm sharing my screen. So
Screen. Okay.
yeah, just let me know when you.
Okay, please go ahead then to the next slide. So So thank you for having me, and I'm happy to follow Brian's presentation because it is exactly working on a 3-den work proposal. And then the idea for UNEP is really, we are really happy to announce a competitive call for proposals. So for the people attending today, the idea for us here in UNEP is to do a pilot project, an innovative proposal with a business and regulatory model for the uptake of smarter digital power distribution infrastructure. So what we would like to do, we have 6 countries. We might focus on 3. I know that Colombia is one of our initial and target. And we would like to make 3 big pilot projects, taking all the guidance we are receiving from EIA and based on the call for proposal, which we of course are working with EIA and sharing with EIA, and trying to get, we're using the financing we're receiving from the Italian ministry, and in order for us to implement real concrete pilot projects. So this is a 4-year project. It is being funded by the Italian ministry. And of course, the call focuses on policy, regulatory, technology, and investment context needed to accelerate the progress on power system modernization, and of course, an effective utilization of demand-side resources. So with this opportunity, we would like to gain on-the-ground insight. We would like to test new approaches, new innovative ideas, and disseminate the learnings. So, of course, we would like to be launching the proposal by before G20. And then, of course, we would like to start working on the beginning of the year of 2022 and to start launching the proposal and to start evaluating the proposals on in 2022. So can you please go ahead to the next slides? So I'm going to share with you 3 types of applications. So we have the urban side, the urban smart energy type of project. These types of projects will be developed in a local neighborhood, or it can be also part of a city. So it can be using digitalization to be applied to existing infrastructure. And of course, all the solutions need to propose can be demand side and also distributed energy resources. So the idea for us here is really to have undergoing modernization or under an existing pilot scheme, because we will share with you the financing. Each project, we will have approximately 1.8 million euros. So the idea is that we would like to use that funding per pilot project for an existing pilot scheme, an existing infrastructure that we would like to modernize and innovate and provide a digitalization to make it more efficient. The type 2 kind of proposal that we are looking for, so it can be either one, it's an islanded system. So this type of projects will address small islands with existing assets. It can be remote or off-grid systems where digitalization would have a demand-side integration benefit. So we would like to use digitalization to make the system or the off-grid or the remote grid more efficient and more innovative. Sorry. And the last type of applications that we are looking for, it can be the type 3, the existing assets and enhancement. So basically, this project will be developed in contact with the existing network assets. So it can be a large number of substations, conventional lines, or power electronics. So it is an existing grid that can be digitalized. And then, of course, to always with the same idea in mind, to use digitalization to improve the efficiency, to reduce, of course, emissions, and also to have a demand-side component. So can you go to the next slide, please? I would like to share with you some examples. For example, the type 1 this is the kind of examples of type 1 projects we're looking for. When we look at the urban smart energy, we're looking for maybe testing electrical vehicle charging on distribution grids. It can be electrical vehicles charging station. It can be digital monitoring and management platforms. It can be grid sensors. So those are the type of examples that can be used, and then the companies and then the consortiums, along with researchers, they can provide an idea of project, something innovative that will allow to address that kind of problems. So we also have some testing flexibility options within the grid. So the grid can be upgraded. We can work on upgrades during the peak demand. So of course, we resolve that issue of blackouts in many countries. We can also use smart meters for the technology, grid sensors. So this type of projects where we can use the guidance that we have received from EIA, and then we can implement it in a real project. We also can do testing in local energy markets, testing in various many nudging instruments by providing simple smart meters devices. So those are the type of examples that will be presented in the call. We will launch the call. We'll have all kind of examples that people can apply for and then request the funding that we are proposing from the Italian ministry. Next slide, please. So those are the examples of type 2 projects. So of course it can be hybridization of small islands with existing assets. It is important to understand that what you're looking for is something innovative. So where the assets they exist, and then we're just adding something to it to make it more innovative and more digital. We can also do a testing of a microgrid in a remote town. We can use, of course, diverse distributed energy resources. We can use PV. We can use battery storage. We can all that existing technology that will benefit and will be really relevant to a country. And of course, we have also the local energy community related projects that could be an upgrading of an existing system. It can be an enhanced data exchange and coordination to ensure further benefits for the community. So like Brian said, this is a people project. What the solution that needs to be proposed will increase the well-being of the people. It will increase the efficiency of the grid. It can increase the efficiency of a mini grid. So the idea is really to present something digital, innovative, but that will improve the livelihood of the people. Next slide, please. And the last type of projects, examples of the type 3 projects. So is the existing assets enhancement. We can work, for example, on a pilot project on local versus national constraint. It is very important for us that we work on the digital twinning associated with consumption data. We detect the low quality, we improve it with digital technologies, and then of course we make it more efficient and more available and more that will provide a better well-being for the people. We also can work, for example, on tested automated demand response technologies. So all those are just examples. So of course, the company that would like to answer to the tender, to the call for proposal, they will need to show and prove that innovation, and of course, we will be able to answer any kind of questions that they might have. But the idea is really to at the end of the day, is to make people's life better by being more energy efficient, by bringing something innovative to the people that they did not have in the past. Next slide, please. So we will have criteria for selections. Of course, the pilot size, it could be one large neighborhood or in one large city. It can be, like I said, an isolated system of network rated. And then the range capacity can go from 10 to 100 megawatt range. We can also look at the project by the number of customers that it will target. They will be, like I said, a minimum of 3 large pilot projects, 1 pilot per country. And like I said, we are really, Colombia is in our top countries that we are targeting. The co-financing, we will provide 70% of the cost of the project, of the pilot project, and then of course 30% will be co-financed by external resources. The pilot project should have duration of at least 2 years, and what we will look at, what we will evaluate to select the best project will be replicability and transferability, proof of scalability, and it's very important for us to look at the project consortium. So those are the few big selection criteria. And then, of course, a full detail will be on the call for proposal. And of course, once again, we'll be able to answer any questions that you may have. Next slide, please. Yeah. So the idea for us is really for you to have an idea of this call for proposal, to kind of talk about it around you in your networks. What we would like to do is we really would like to, we will launch it very soon. We will share it. We will be open to any questions, any details once the call will be launched. And then like maybe the last thing is, like I said, each pilot project runs approximately between 1.5 and 1.8 million euros. Thank you very much, Juan, and I give back to you the floor, please.
Thanks a lot, Miriam. I'm positive that many questions will arise, and encourage you to formulate them on the Q&A tab on the right side of the screen. Thanks, Miriam. So, Miriam, in the meantime, while I switch presentations, we have a question that says, when this call for proposals will be launched?
So we're hoping to launch the call for proposal by, I think, September, end of September.
Okay. Thank you, Miriam. Okay, so moving on with our agenda. Now we're going to start with our first networking session. For all participants, you will be taken automatically to the networking floor, and then we're gonna meet again, and this is going to again happen automatically in 15 minutes at 10:05, 15 minutes to try to stick to the agenda. I want to remember you the options that you have in this mode. You can join different tables, you can look for participants, you can go to other floors where you might find other participants or other tables. This is a very flexible and open space for you to join as you wish. So we really encourage you to make the best of this space and to start creating connections and discussions around our topic and around our event. So see you in 15 minutes. I'm going to be jumping around some tables, just checking in to see whether everything is working fine. Same with the other event organizers. See you in a bit. Hello again. Check whether everything is fine. Okay. So moving on with our agenda, now I'm going to introduce our first panel session, which is going to be based on a seed case, the Transactive Energy Colombia initiative that Julián Rojas briefly mentioned during his presentation. This panel is going to be moderated by Alexandra Schneider. She's the task leader of the Global Observatory of Peer-to-Peer and Transactive Energy Models. So before starting with the presentation of the seed case, I would like to welcome Alexandra to this panel.
Share my slide, but I not
Hey,
sure what's going
okay. We can hear you now. Just wanted to
Okay.
make sure that you could join us.
Yeah. If you could just put my slide up, that would be great. But in the meantime, I'll just say that this session is meant for the people who are involved in the Global Observatory in the subtasks, which look at the essential elements of peer-to-peer energy models. They've been working on literature reviews in the past months as part of the preparatory phase of our work, ahead of our selection of pilots and collecting data of pilots across the world. So what will happen in this session is that they will apply the knowledge that they gained from the literature reviews and the work they did in the past months to a case study of peer-to-peer energy trading. And that case study will be the case study in Colombia, which Juan just mentioned. And this session is really also in the spirit of, thank you, I can see it now. This session is also in the spirit of the Global Observatory, which is to look at these peer-to-peer energy models from a critical perspective and an objective perspective, and the advantages but also disadvantages of these models. And we want to look at pilots in this manner. So this session will kind of give you a taste of what we plan to do within the Global Observatory. So we will have first a presentation by Juan Manuel, and I think also his colleague Juan Esteban from NEU. And then we will have each of the subtasks, which you can see on the slide here, which look at different aspects of these peer-to-peer energy sharing models. They will have a few minutes to each reflect on the pilots that we will have heard about. And then after, we will have space for Q&A. So don't, feel free to write your questions in the Q&A window in the chat. And I look forward to this panel session. Thanks. Over to you, Manuel.
And so I'll take over with the presentation of the seed case. Just briefly, I want to start by saying that the Transactive Energy Colombia initiative started a few years ago with the intention of piloting different schemes new to Colombia, not only in terms of the business models, but also the technology and the cooperations needed to start pushing forward these new user-centered energy models. So in this case, for a peer-to-peer trial that we designed 2 years ago, we came together with different stakeholders. First of all, the community or the users that will take part of this trial. Second, the academy, the EIA University and UCL, acting as facilitators among stakeholders and between the companies and the users. Third, the utility, which is EPM, a local utility from Medellin and Antioquia, one of the most important ones in Colombia and probably Latin America. A solar installer, ERCO, which is a company that has gained a lot of traction over the last couple of years with above 1,000 customers in the distributed solar segment and growing all around the country. NEU, which is an energy retailer that has formulated or defined their value proposition towards maximizing value for end users through technology, and which CEO Juan Esteban Incapié is going to join me with a couple of slides about the project and outlook of what this trial has been over the last year, and additional stakeholders and tech providers such as Grid Singularity that has provided support on modeling and better understanding the technology and the tools needed to run these kind of schemes. So the objectives of the seed case were stated as you can see here in your screen. First of all, we wanted to validate or to install and connect to the grid different DERs at the residential level with different characteristics. Which kind of characteristics? The household infrastructure characteristics, economic characteristics from the users, trying to cover different segments of this residential market that will become the key participants of these new decentralized models. Our second objective is to test the deployment of a smart energy infrastructure, understanding that this is the gateway for users to engage with new models. And here we're talking about cloud computing, artificial intelligence. We are talking about advanced infrastructure, measurement infrastructure, or smart metering. And that all comes together in a trial like this. And the third objective is to model and simulate a peer-to-peer energy market using real user data for us to better understand the risks and how this market could operate in a context like the Colombian one, but also understanding the elements that could lead us to scale these kind of trials, or that could also become or create potential risks to user, trying to stick to that objectivity of whether these schemes are going to be beneficial to users or not. So the basic layout of our pilot consists on 13 users, out of which 6 are high-income consumers that don't own any sort of DR or solar assets, but that due to their infrastructure conditions, mainly because they live in apartments, they are not able to install solar or participate in solar with business as usual. On the other side, and in terms of assets and in terms of DERs, we have 3 low-income prosumers. For these users, we installed different solar plants for each of them. We also have 3 high-income prosumers with different PV plant sizes. They already own these assets, so in this trial, basically, they were invited to participate in the trial with the assets they already own. And 1 community house is our 13th user. This community house is an NGO that through the project we could deploy a larger solar plant and also a battery for us also to better understand how this technology, storage technology, which is quite new for Colombia, could integrate with these kind of models. And all these users basically were connected through a digital platform developed by New Energy that allowed them basically to monitor their energy consumption, their energy generation, and to interact with other users, and also to get information about the kind of energy that they are consuming. This is a quick look on how our prosumers look, and especially for those who join us who are not from Latin America, you can easily tell the huge difference in terms of household infrastructure between one prosumer and the other. And this creates a lot of problems, but also opportunities. And I want to bring your attention to how users pay for energy in Colombia. Below the picture, you have a graph that shows the tariff for each sector, residential sector in Colombia. We have 6 different ones. It's a strata system that's correlated with income, but basically sector 1 is for the poorest neighborhoods in Colombia, as opposed to sectors 5 and 6, which are the wealthiest sectors or neighborhoods in Colombia. And then you can see that on the left of your screen, sector 1, 2, and 3, they get energy subsidized up to 60% for sector 1. Our small prosumer on the right left is sector 3. Then we have sector 4, which would be considered as middle class, understanding that the middle class is not really big in Colombia compared to other countries. They don't pay, they don't have subsidized energy. They pay full tariff, and sector 5 and 6, they pay a 20% contribution that goes to fund mainly or to cover the subsidies that sector 1, 2, and 3 receive. Of course, there is a problem with this scheme, and is that sector 5 and 6 is the very small percentage of the population, and actually every year there is a huge financial gap or fiscal gap in terms of what the contribution is and what the subsidies really cost. So this could be also an opportunity, and we saw that at the beginning. This could be an opportunity to better understand how this allocation of benefits and contributions to subsidize could work under these kind of schemes. Some lessons and observations we see not only from our pilot users, but also from other residential users through surveys and through empirical research. We see a preference for new energy attributes, mainly for clean energy and social impact. There is an interest of users to basically access this kind of energy portfolio based on attributes or differentiation. And this is also an interesting opportunity that comes from the possibility of trace energy through digital platforms. We saw some critical barriers for adoption in terms of technical, legal, and social issues. As you could see, the state of the infrastructure, the knowledge of the users about the process for becoming a prosumer, the difficulty to actually understand how the regulation was created, and how users can make the best of this regulation. Also, from the side of the utility, we see, and the utilities in general, we see severe delays on legalizing and making official the connections and the participation of consumers. We see also among the users of the pilot, not most of them, but some of them, especially the high-income users, more participation, more engagement in terms of energy traded and in terms of the interaction with the app or the digital platform. We see benefits for the participants in general, but also we see a very important risk that low-income consumers or prosumers could be excluded. There are some concerns on whether the high-income prosumers make the best of this because they understand it, but also because they have higher or bigger assets. They have a better understanding of the market. They have an easier way also to interact with the digital platform, and that could be a problem in the long term if we think of these models as open retail or decentralized markets in which anyone could potentially participate. Now I would like to pass on to Juan Esteban just to give us an outlook of how this pilot becomes in something else for a digital retailer.
Sorry to interrupt. If you could keep this as brief as possible, because I see we're over the 10 minutes for this presentation. So yeah, if you could just keep it as brief as possible, that would be great. Thank you very much.
Sure. Just getting a message from Juan Esteban saying that to join, he's facing some technical issues. Just let me quickly check. Sorry, I don't know what have happened with Juan Esteban. Just wanted to check where he could actually join. Otherwise, we can just jump straight to the discussion session.
Okay. So thank you very much for that summary, Juan Manuel, about the Colombian pilot. I suggest we move on now to the interventions from the panelists, and they're each going to have a few minutes to give their impressions of the pilot, as I said, from the perspective of the work they've done. And the next panelist is Shafi Kadem from IERC in Ireland, and he's going to talk from a perspective of power systems integration. Shafi, go ahead.
Hi, good afternoon, everybody. Thanks, Alexandra and Juan, for this nice presentation and information about this project. Before I start, just a couple of words about our task so far in the subtask 1, which deals with the power system layer. We had done a couple of good reviews actually in the last couple of months, and our findings was really interesting. And I would say that's just a brief about these things, that so far we had reviewed around more than 150 publications in this area, which deals with this somehow T2P commodity self-consumptions and the transactive energies areas, and which mainly we try to find out how the link with this deals with the power system layer. I mean, the impact on these type of trading mechanisms on the network. So yeah, finally we find around 50 papers that have some sort or somehow they mention these things and did some work as well. So we will have some interesting outcomes, and we'll be discussing these things maybe in the next day, maybe tomorrow. But yeah, so we have successfully done these things with a good amount of researchers involved in this, and paper has been submitted, and it has been accepted for publications also in the Applied Energy Journal. We just got this news last week. So thanks for all this contributor on this thing. So from that point of view, what we find that there's a good amount of lagging actually when we deal with these different types of energy trading market mechanisms, and how really they work or impact on the distribution network, especially especially if we talk about this, how this grid stability and power quality, like in terms of the voltage management and the network congestions, and also the unbalanced issues. So these are some of these critical points or area that we find that needs to be focused on. And at the same time, we can also find that there's a good amount of shortage in terms of our reviews. I mean, the output from the review, that most of these studies also, they do not deal anything with kind of TSO-DSO coordination issues. And also we find that there's a shortage on the replicability and the scalability issues. So these sort of things actually not really have been discussed, or still we did not find that some sort of good amount of practical or the demonstration work has been done in these areas. So from that point of view, we would say that's these the project that's in Colombian trial project. So we would be really happy to learn a little bit more about from that point of view, that how we see that we have a good some user categories. We have some low consumer, I mean the who were in the category, and some of the big consumers, and on the community levels as well. You have different structure. That's a good point, good thing that you have chosen these consumer prosumers combinations in different power capacity levels in their resources. So how when this trading in the market modeling or these analysis have been done, how really it's do you have any kind of information on that, how its impact on the network basically? Like if I say, for example, when you have these big consumers who have around 9 kilowatt capacity of panel and the systems, so when they trade, when you in your market model you have this trading, then how really in the practical cases when they inject the energy through this network, what happens in that case. Is there any kind of voltage variations you have observed, or any kind of power quality issues that you have taken care of? This sort of information actually would be really interesting to learn. Yeah, so these are some of the important points that we find that could be interesting. The one more point I would also like to ask, maybe know more about that, is just see that you have these different tariff systems for the, also depending on these user categories. So you have high consumers who actually provide the standard charge plus the subsidy amount. So if you are trying to implement this type of energy trading mechanisms, will they be impact on that existing tariff systems, or how they will be really interested to go further on that type of mechanisms? So that could be also interesting to learn from trading point of view. But at the same time, as we said, just from the power system point of view, we always want to know more about how its impact on the network. So yeah, I would say should stop now. So we'll be discussing more.
Yeah, thank you. No, yeah, that's useful. Thank you very much, Shafi. So I'm gonna move on to subtask 2 on ICT and technology. Brian, and I believe your colleague Fabio as well, perhaps from IERC as well. So if you could give as brief as possible your insights, that would be very useful. Thank you.
I'm not sure if the connection issue was with me or with somebody else, but I'm losing kind of cameras here. So I'll just briefly go through subtask 2, and like from our literature review, looking at the hardware, software, and data, one of the biggest issues we had was actually getting access to information about the hardware, software, and data that was used in the various projects and trials out there. And I think this information needs to be more readily available in order to kind of progress really these peer-to-peer trials and transitive energy. Standardization is going to be a big challenge here as well, because like what we're doing at the moment is each trial is putting their own kind of hardware. They're using sometimes bespoke software for the proof of concept of the trial. But then there's also looking at the data that they're gathering, and what data are they gathering, and what are they using it for? Are they sharing it? And can they make that data publicly available for like helping other trials progress further? Like the concern really is that we're going to end up in the future with all of these mini trials, is that we'll end up with like legacy systems and software solutions, and the communication protocols then between these various pieces of hardware going forward might be a challenge, and we'll have maybe like in the future massive retrofit costs. So the most that we need to try to do is to capture the knowledge that we gather from these projects and trials and store them somewhere that's publicly available, and keep that going forward. And that'll be one of the tasks really for subtask 2. Like the Colombian trial, they mentioned the technical experience around the hardware and increased their costs, and the data that they were gathering as well had issues with it as well. So I think it's important, you know, that there is some sort of guidelines made available to trials when they're getting up and running to help them like avoid these additional costs and issues. And we say looking at the like one mentioned, you know, like the better understanding of the tools that were being used. And I think that this would be the Colombian trial as well, but all trials that take place going forward, you know, that we should make that data and the information on those trials available to. Okay, I'll pass you over there to my colleague Fabio, who maybe has a statement to make as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. I think Brian covered pretty much everything here. I'd just like to thank you guys for the presentation of this project and the challenge of integrating data in such an environment that can find so many different devices. And protocols, or the lack of protocols, is not a small task. We could talk. We don't have time for that. But we were talking about some protocol suggestions we found during our research. But I think I will put these questions as in the session Q&A, it will be more appropriate for that. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Fabio and Brian. So I'm now going to move on to subtask 3. So it's from a market design perspective. We have Lynn Kathlen here joining from the US. Lynn, the floor is yours.
Great, thank you, Alexandra. I'm slide. So I have a black screen.
We can see the slide, but if you could make it full screen, that could be better. Yes, we can see it now. Thanks. We cannot hear you, Lynn. Could you unmute yourself, please? Hello, Lynn? We can hear you now. Okay, I think we might maybe switch to the next.
Hello?
Oh, yes, we can hear you now, yes.
Can you hear me now, Alexandra?
We can hear you, yeah. Do you want to try sharing again your slide?
Oh, great. Thanks, Nicolo. Rather than sharing my slide, then I will talk through my slide. And I want to thank the team on subtask 3 that has worked very diligently on this literature review. We have 145 papers that we've been reviewing, so it's been quite a daunting task. And so I want to focus on some of the insights that we get from looking at the transactions and markets aspect of this very interesting project in Colombia. And I'm very encouraged by how the ambition that you've shown with this project, and I hope that it gives you some important lessons. I have three particular things I will highlight that we've found from our looking at the transactions and market design aspect of Transactive and peer-to-peer and community energy. The first is to really focus on what it is that markets bring to the party. Why are markets and market processes an important part of the electric system? And so the first important insight is that market participation enables flexibility, and it also enables DER integration, right? So if we want to have decarbonization with more DER and integrating DER into the system needs to be more flexible to be able to absorb all of those changes. And markets are a great process for flexibility, but there are certain things that are required in order for that to be true. The first is that the communication of price signals that are clear, transparent, and dynamic. And that's going to enable the flexibility to coordinate across all of these different kinds of and sizes of and locations of resources interacting over time. That price signal enables the participants in the system to respond and to have their controllable devices respond through automation, right? So that's the second part of this, the market participation, is having controllable devices that can respond through automation, which means it's more user-friendly and not as inconvenient for the actual humans. The other thing that I think this pilot highlights is the importance of having an integrated portfolio of both controllable and non-controllable assets, right? So the PV assets are non-controllable. And so sending a dynamic price signal to a non-controllable asset isn't necessarily going to change people's behavior or change their decision of how much to supply or how much to consume. And so if you're going to have PV as part of the electric system, having controllable assets along with the non-controllable PV is going to be really important. And so I think the design principle to apply from this first insight is to really focus on enabling active response and having that be automated. And so that's the first insight, is to enable active automated response. The second is that what are the objectives of the market generated compensation for DER? It's both to provide that coordination in real time, but also to provide incentives for investment in DER. But without a portfolio of markets, it's really hard to realize the full value and the flexibility that the DER can provide. What we saw in a lot of the research that we reviewed is that a lot of the projects and a lot of the models and the simulation focus on situations where you only have a commodity market, right, an energy market. But DER provide not just energy, but also all sorts of grid services, voltage regulation, frequency regulation, and so on. And so I think that's a gap and something that to be explored further. Portfolio of markets, so an energy market and then the markets for grid services, or what in the US we tend to call ancillary services. So the design principle there is to develop markets that enable participants to benefit from providing those grid services. And then my final comment is that one challenge that I think this project faces is implementing a transactive system within an existing tariff. I don't want to step on Lucila's toes in subtask 5, but I will say that that makes it really difficult to realize these design principles of dynamic pricing and flexibility in a portfolio of markets. My co-authors, Marie-Louise Alt, Dave Chasson, and I have a paper that just was published in Energies on exactly this problem of how do you implement a transactive system in a brownfield setting where you have to integrate with an existing tariff that has net metering and so on. So with that, I'll turn it back over to Alexandra. Thank you.
Thanks, Lynn. Thank you very much. Now we have subtask 4, which is on the economic and social value of these peer-to-peer energy models. And we're going to have a presentation from Juan Pablo Cárdenas, who's going to be talking about the pilot from this perspective. Over to you.
Hi, everyone. Thank you, Alexandra. From subtask 4, like the broad question we're trying to answer is what exactly would get users to join and to get on board of this type of new user-centered energy systems. So we focused our literature research on that question: what types or forms of social and economic values arises from this type of models? What type of success factors have been identified in current studies that we can somehow generalize or take as an example. So I won't get too much into the literature review itself. I will just mention that a main theme, an important thing that we uncover from this is a somehow a tension between contradictory or opposing values in some of the studies. And also that these, as we are talking about, human preferences, this is very context specific. So in different contexts and with different type of users in different type of energy markets, we're seeing that the values and the preference vary somehow. So what I want to focus is on 3 evidences from the Medellin pilot and 1 limitation also. and seeing those evidence and the limitation through the lens of what we have find out with the literature review. So the first evidence has to do with sustainability values, referring to the components which are environmental values and social contribution values that we found in the Medellin pilot. Stepping back a little bit to explain the Medellin pilot, there are three important results from the pilot itself: the deployment of the actual pilot and the operation of the pilot, the interviews that we run with the pilot participants, and also a choice experiment that we run with a broad segment of the population in Medellin. So with going back to the sustainability values, environmental and social contribution were the top values for which users were willing to pay more in the energy supply, and we find this across our literature review. Always the environmental value and some form of social contribution, they're always on the top of user preferences and reasons to participate in these type of models. Moving on and talking about the tensions between different values, we find a tension between anonymity, which is an important trait that users have found preferable, let's say, for instance, in blockchain transactions in energy and so forth, that to have anonymity. But also we have a social relationship component, which is arising from this when we have transaction among peers and community self-consumption. An important value that arises and people consider valuable is the social relationships and the sharing. So there is a tension between these two, and this was evidenced in the Medellin pilot. In our choice experiment, we find that an average user would be expecting to pay actually less, not to pay more of finding valuable, but finding it less valuable to buy energy from an individual that is anonymous, for an anonymous individual. So we find this aversion towards anonymity, and we conclude, or we infer, that in order to get people to find value in this, the platforms and the user interaction must foster somehow social relationship sense. Because we assume somehow that participants will find value in trading with other peers, but we somehow found that the anonymity characteristic of the individual was actually subtracting value from the model itself. The third evidence has to do with distributional impacts. That means how these models affect different types of users. So this is a big component of the Medellin pilot, where we have users from lower socioeconomic levels, and we have users from the highest socioeconomic levels throughout the city. And we find this in the transactions of the operation of the pilot themselves. Big prosumers and big consumers have the majority of the bulk of the transactions in the market, relegating the small prosumers and the small consumers to a minor proportion of the transactions in the pilot, which shows that what could happen in a massification of these models, where low-income users might be left behind. Also, we find structural challenges, wiring connections, roof material issues, the procedures from the energy company to connect low-income users were significantly slower, and also educational issues where there was always a challenge of explaining and getting users to understand what they were participating in, and how they could interact with the pilot itself. And this is contrasting, these challenges are contrasting with a strong willingness to participate and a strong interest that we find in these segments of the population through the interviews and through the deployment of the pilot. Shedding light into the importance of new types of financial schemes, new types of educational schemes that could come from the utility company itself. So there's this also tension between what could happen if these values that we're finding can only be realized for the wealthiest users. Finally, the limitation, the important limitations from our pilot, which is very important, and it has to do with money itself. So monetary values that I haven't talked, the economic values, are also of top importance across the review. We find people care about the price, and the economic values in general terms comes from better buying prices, better selling prices for the consumers, and also savings behind the meter. So the limitation of our pilot is that the market itself doesn't have financial consequences for the users. So as the saying goes, we couldn't test that people or users would put their money where their mouth is. So this has been found in the literature itself, where users overstate their willingness to pay or the willingness to sacrifice some financial outcomes in order to get these non-monetary values. So this is an important limitation, and it reflects on what we find about the users having a high willingness or interest in non-monetary values, but we couldn't prove or test them for them if they would actually make the trade with financial outcomes. That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much. So now we have Lucila de Almeida. She's going to present on behalf of Florence School of Regulation. She's representing FSR, and she's going to talk about the legal and policy aspects of these models. Lucila, over to you.
Thanks so much, Alexandra. I hope you can hear me well. So thank you, Alexandra. It's my pleasure here to be here representing the Subtask 5, in which is in charge of conducting the research related to policy and regulation. As Alexandra introduced it, it's a subtask carried by the Florence School of Regulation, the European University Institute. And I have a pleasure to co-lead this subtask with my colleague, Nicolas Rosset, under the supervision of Jean-Michel Glachan. And I'm great thanks to this research involved in the literature review, which of course was extremely exhaustive. We collected from the proper, besides the papers that has been reviewed, but the ones that was in the systematic literature review that was considered. We have 60 papers, and the literature review of the subtask, we try to underline regulation on the energy market. The papers would deal with the regulation on the energy sector, but as well the ones with the legal aspect. In other words, the ones who would look at the general fields of law as contract, consumer protection, and see to what extent and investigate it to what extent these fields of law would either barrier or provide a facilitation to this kind of pilot. So focus on properly the pilot project, which was extremely insightful to see such a different and challenging implementation of a pilot project in peer-to-peer trade. And let me speak about it, make a comment related with the literature review of subtask in 3 aspects. The first aspect that I would like to bring is something that has been discussed, but I will point out the legal perspective here, especially concerning the diversity of consumers. So it's extremely, I would say, satisfying to see a pilot project in which they take it seriously, the inclusion of many types of prosumers and consumers in a single pilot project. And what is an important aspect when concerns to the literature review, as you have seen, is that it's common to see in policy documents, in regulatory policy recommendations, to have regulations ensuring that consumers from low-income class, part of the society, would have access, the right to access to peer-to-peer. They would not be excluded from this process of distribution, of having more distribution energy resource, and as well to be involved in this kind of new modes of energy transaction. So it's a common thing that we identified in the literature. But once you look at it, the detail of the pilot project that has been presented, we can perceive that actually there is complexities in terms of cross-subsidiation of consumers, of different types of consumers being involved in the same pilot project that has not been considered in detail in the literature. So here you can see, as presented in the beginning of the session, Colombia has a legal framework in which you would scale different types of consumers. These consumers would have different types of cross-subsidiation, the way they would be charged. But it's not common to understand in what extent when these vulnerable consumers, especially those ones that would be in the scale 1 and scale 2, would be involved in this peer-to-peer, how you would compensate it in the systems of trading peer-to-peer in a way they would not be in disadvantage by engaging in peer-to-peer trade. So this was one important aspect that I would consider the literature review so far, the one that we have conducted. They would not explore this aspect as deep, and definitely it was the pilot project was important to highlight this aspect. The same point is still about diversity of prosumers. It's concerned the fact that the pilot project involved not only consumers as household, but as well a community of household consumers. One aspect that we notice here, it's not a lack on the literature review, but actually that exists in the literature review, is a concern about when you speak about peer-to-peer trading, who are the peers you are speaking? And here it's very clear the pilot project made a choice of including as a peers consumers, which for the literature review, especially when it comes to the legal aspect, is a concern that once you were speaking about peer-to-peer, if you are only households, individual households, you would have less less problematic contractual relationships, as far as you wouldn't have in the same pilot project involving a supermarket, for instance, and a household being traded and being considered as peers, while actually, legally speaking, they cannot be considered two consumers properly. So, but here you still have like a community house, a community house, which, as you explained, it was an NGO. The things that the NGO is still in many legal jurisdictions is not necessarily an individual consumer, cannot be equipared as an individual consumer. As being part of a peer-to-peer pilot project, we still could face it from the literature review as you develop it. You could have an issues if we would move, if this pilot would move for a real peer-to-peer trading. The second aspect is about the digital platforms, and here it's an important one. One thing that we find in the literature review, especially when it comes to Europe, is that the digital platforms, once they have the role of setting of automatized traded, here you'll find it a legal issue, is that there is two legal features or aspects or legal identities of digital platforms that has been regulated not by energy regulation, but actually by the regulation of the digital platforms, which is what they call information society services. And this would have consequences for the liability aspect of these digital platforms. In the case of digital platforms would have automatized trade, which most of the pilot projects, they have automatized trade in which they would define the algorithms to setting prices. These digital platforms could not be considered information society services. Therefore, they have to operate it as a supplier and therefore for having a supplier, they would have a consequences of requirement of license. In this case of pilot project, what is a very important aspect of it is that actually there is no automatized trade. By consequence, you mentioned there are including benefits for those who traded more often in the platforms. So perhaps this pilot project is interesting from the aspect that maybe it is one way of ensuring that platforms in peer-to-peer trading could be considered information society services and not a supplier. And here I'm speaking about legal in terms of jurisdictions of EU, which has a clear regulation of digital platforms, but let's not forget that many countries, especially in South America, has transposing the regulation of digital platforms, transplanting the digital platforms in Europe, and you can find it the same issue. And the third aspect that I will be short because my time has been ending. It's about the financing of PV. I think one of the important things of this pilot project is that it address and incorporated and embraced households from different parts of economic social background. And of course, the financing of the PV, it's a question about who financing the PV. This is one aspect that we didn't cover in the literature review, as far as in the regulations were not, there was not a sophisticated, at least not at EU level, a sophisticated regulation how to financing these PVs at the time that we made it a regulation. We made it the literature review, which was in the middle of 2020. You ended in consideration. So besides these 3 points, I think they are the key ones. You have issues of data sharing and technological preparedness that was raised. But I think in terms of what we can find in the pilot project that could highlighted missing parts and parts that were very there was very significant, and there was sources for tensions in the literature review. There were these 3 ones. So thank you, Alexandra, and I will give the floor back to you.
Thank you, Lucila. So unfortunately, I think we don't have time for the Q&A, but if anyone has questions for the panelists, if you could just put them into the Q&A section, please feel free to. But in any case, I learned a lot from this session, so thank you a lot to the panelists. I think there are tensions between automation, flexibility, while keeping a social relationship between participants and making sure that they benefit from participation and are not hurt by participation, and responsibility with licensing, for example, and also, as Subtask 2 said, making sure that the findings are useful for everyone else, so that it's all made open, the results of the pilots. So here I will finish this session, but thank you everyone, and I'll pass on to Juan Manuel.
Thanks, Alexander. So let's move on to our second networking session. We're a little bit behind schedule, but we'll try to catch up. So for this session, we're going to have 10 minutes. So we'll meet you back again in 10 minutes at 11:10 Colombian time. But I want to say that at the end of the event, the networking platform is going to be open for 1 hour. So I strongly invite you to join us right after we finish with the presentations. So let's head back to the networking floor and see you in a bit. So hello everyone, we are back with our presentations. In this section, we're going to have 2 presentations about a couple of case studies in Latin America. First, we're going to have a presentation from Ignacio Santelices. He's the Executive Director of the Energy Sustainability Agency of Chile. And then Kathlen Schneider, she's the director of the Institute for the Development of Alternative Energy in Latin America, IDEAL. She's located in Brazil. So welcome Ignacio and Kathleen. And Ignacio, if you want, you can go ahead with your presentation. Thanks for joining us today. Just want to test Kathleen or Ignacio. Can you hear me? Just give me a second. I think Ignacio and Kathleen might have some technical issues.
Hello, everyone. Can you hear me now?
Hi, Kathleen. Yes, hear you well.
Thank you. So should I? It's Ignacio presenting first, right?
Yes, Ignacio. He just joined. Thanks, Ignacio, and welcome.
Hey, hello. Okay, thank you very much. Sorry, but I was not allowed to present or to speak. Or now it's okay. So let me just share a brief we do. Okay, so hope you are watching at my screen. If not, please let me know. Okay. So we are the Energy Sustainability Agency from Chile. We are a non-profit foundation created by law, and our role is to articulate public-private initiatives and also to implement different programs and public policies from the Ministry of Energy. So we work on different areas, but basically energy efficiency, renewables, and sustainable transport. And we cover all those topics in the different kind of consumers. We work with students, with our educations and capacity building programs, with the industry and mining, on buildings, through retrofit programs, also through heating and cooling initiatives, and as I said before, on sustainable transport. So what I want to show you today is two things. First, the technological pilots that we do. And here I have two examples. The urban solar microgrid. We developed this solar microgrid with solar roofs in Providencia, which is a city in Santiago. And also it includes two storage systems, just to know how this integrated grid on a neighborhood could behave and could be more reliable and secure. And we also developed an energy management system at the agency, in which we installed solar panels, as you can see in the picture. We have an electric car, and also we have a B2X or B2G charger, which allows us to take out the electricity from the car, and on that way we can manage our energy consumption. So we decide when we get energy from the grid, when we are producing with the solar panels, when we are injecting renewable energy to the grid or to the house, and when we are using the car battery at peak hours or so. And the thing of these two initiatives is that first we can check the business model, see how profitable is doing this on the private sector, and also to develop regulatory changes and proposals. So many of these things are not still regulated, so no, like common people cannot just do this. So we do this, we try the technology, and then we give the information to the Ministry of Energy so they can take the measures and implement the regulations that are required to massify this. So these are like technological pilots, and also we've been actually trying on how to democratize the renewable energy. And here we have two initiatives. The first is community generation. So here we're talking about a large scale or medium large scale solar plant. We are talking about 100 kilos, 66 kilos. And the idea is that we are using municipal land on these projects, and the energy produced on these panels is assigned to different households. Okay, so they don't have the solar panel on the roof, they have it on a common ground, but a small share of the production is assigned to every household. And we are doing here 2 pilots, one with 44 electro-dependent families and another one with around 80 families that will start using electric heating instead of firewood. But to reduce the cost of the electricity bill, we are including this solar plant. And also to democratize renewables, we tried another model, which is the aggregation of demand to buy massive solar panels with lower prices. And then we gave co-financing to households. So we did this in around 100 houses in the north of Chile, and it was very successful. So with this kind of pilots, first we tried the business model, and second, we give insights for the development of public policies. And so for example, based on Caldera 30+, that is the aggregation of demand, now we have a larger scale program called Solar House, in which we are installing around 3,000 solutions on rooftops in different cities in Chile, from north to south. And the model is quite similar. So we are aggregating the demand on cities. Once we have a minimum scale, we go to the market, we do a tender process. We are getting very good prices. It's like 30% of discount in the prices we get from buying 100 or 200 panels at a time. So we give that discount to the families. And then also we have a co-financing that ranges between 0 and 50%, depending on the value of the house. And in that way, we will install only this year more than 3,000 solar panel solutions in 3,000 homes in the country. I think that in Chile today we have around only 5,000 solar houses with solar panels. So this is like a 60% of the current capacity. And we are planning on the second version for next year because we've seen a lot of interest in families to start including solar generation on the roofs. So some lessons learned on this type of initiatives. First, working together with public government, local governments, private sector, NGOs, it's very important. It's also very important not only be focused on top-down initiatives like big laws and regulations. Also, we have to build from the bottom up, coming up with initiatives raised by municipalities, households, small communities, to get close the climate challenges to people. Public policies certainly are critical at the beginning to develop the market, to lower the prices, to show the benefits of these technologies. And the big challenges we are facing are, well, how do we decentralize these programs? How do we move from the central government to local governments? And how do we make the case for a business case for households? So not only rely on public policies, on subsidies, but also let the market work on this. And we think that all the initiatives we are doing have a high potential to be replicated in different countries in Latin America. And finally, which is the transition we are living on the electricity sector especially. Well, at the beginning, we were just consumers. We just get the electricity through the wires to our homes. Today, and in Chile, from 2016, we are energy prosumers. It's a concept that someone developed here in the country. So we produce and consume electricity with the solar panels. But then the next step will be to be energy managers. So we will include batteries, or we will include electric cars with batteries. Think that the battery of an electric car can give enough electricity for a home for about 2 or 3 weeks. So doing a good management of electricity with the solar panels and the batteries will be the next stage in our development. So I only had 5 to 7 minutes. I think I'm running out of time. So thank you very much. And I will be ready for any question that you have. Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Ignacio, for your presentation and for sharing your experience in Chile. And we'll take the questions in the Q&A section on the right. So Kathleen, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juan. That you can see my screen and you're hearing me well as well.
I can hear you and see your screen.
Okay, thank you. So as Juan mentioned, I'm going to present some case studies about community energy here in Brazil, and I'm going to give a focus into the cooperatives. So this was my research topic into my master thesis, and also is one of the main themes that I'm in the projects that I'm coordinating here at Instituto Ideal. So before I present to you the case studies, I would like to contextualize you a little bit about our distributed generation regulation. In 2012, the Brazilian Electricity Regulating Agency published our distributed generation regulation here in Brazil that allowed a one-to-one admission scheme. I won't give you too much detail on that. I'll leave that to Marco Aurelio, the next panelist in the next session. But what I would like to highlight here for you is the fact that this regulation went through a revision process in 2015 and came into force in 2016. And since then, energy communities into the distributed generation context are allowed here in the country. And we have 3 manners of organizing energy communities in that context here in Brazil, into horizontal or vertical condominium, consortia, or cooperatives. And I'm going to specifically present the cooperatives case studies, okay? So one of the projects that we have here at Ideal Institute is together with the German Cooperative and Haifanten Confederation. This project is led by the GRV, and we are interviewing, we tracked some distributed generation cooperatives here in Brazil. We tracked around 20 to 30 initiatives, and last year we had the opportunity to interview 16 of them. And they are spread in about 10 federal units of Brazil, mainly in South and Southeast, as you can see here in the map. And what we interviewed, what we asked for them, it was mainly like what were their main motivations, their main barriers to develop their business models and their plans for the future and things like that. So I chose 3 of them to present to you today. The first of them that I would like to talk about is Kober. Kober was the pioneer of the distributed generations cooperatives that we have here in Brazil. They were established in 2016. So right after the regulation came out, they started to organize themselves. And Kober is the result of the organization of, and also the objective in common of a group of 23 friends that they got together and they raised money to install and build the 75 kilowatt peak solar photovoltaic system. And they are located in the north of Brazil at Paragominas City. And the land that you can see here in this picture was donated by Paragominas municipality. Another cooperative that I'm presenting to you today is Compartsol. Compartsol was established in 2017, and they are located in São Paulo, in the southeast of Brazil. They began their project with a 75 kilowatt peak system in 2017, and in 2019 they grew up their system to this 400 kilowatt peak system, and last year they just installed this 1 megawatt solar system that you can see in this picture here below. Currently, they're generating energy to 110 consumer units. And the main difference here in this business model of this cooperative is the fact that the PV system is not, it's owned by a third-party investor. So the cooperative participants, they do not own the system. They just rent the energy credits generated by the system from the cooperative, and the cooperative by its turn rent the PV system from this third-party investor. And another aspect that's interesting about this model is that Compartsol installed this energy efficiency equipment in their participants' houses to track their energy consumption. And every month they send them some reports to give them some insights of how to save some energy by changing some equipments or maybe changing some energy consumption habits. And the third one that I would like to show to you today is the cooperative Ciclos. Ciclos was established in 2019. And their model is very interesting because they have this intercooperation of many different actors. So Cicobi Espírito Santo is a credit cooperative, which is the main funding partner of this project. So this system that you can see in this picture is owned by a Cicobi cooperative. Cicobi also supported the development of CleanClick, which is a startup that was responsible for developing the business model of Ciclos and also the digital energy management of the cooperative. Ciclos, by its turn, is a platform cooperative that offers services not only in energy, but also in health insurances and telephony. And Copeave is an agricultural cooperative who owns this roof that you can see here in this picture. So they rent the roof to Cicobi, install the PV system on their roof. So this 1 megawatt peak that you can see in this picture is not generating energy just for Ciclos, but also for Cicobi consumer units and also for Copeave consumer units. And to conclude, I would like to invite you to visit energia.coop, which is another project that is also led from the GRV in partnership with us. It's a platform in which we present other case studies of distributed generation cooperatives and also other initiatives of energy communities here in Brazil. You can also find some off-grid initiatives in our initiatives map. That's all for today. Very quickly as well, if you have any questions, do not hesitate to contact me. Thank you.
Thank you, Kathleen, for your presentation. Now I'd like to invite Santiago to our next section, which is the second construction of socio-economic value in Latin America via user-centered models. In this panel, we are going to have the participation of Juan Morales from EXEM, the market operator in Colombia, Professor Ángela Cadena, she's the coordinator of the mission of the energy transformation in Colombia, Marco Aurelio Lindsay Castro from ANEEL, the regulator in Brazil, and once again, I welcome Ignacio from the Energy Sustainability Agency from Chile to join this panel. Santiago, the floor is yours. Okay. We have all the panelists. We are just missing our moderator. Just check. Seems that he's having a bit of technical issues. Sorry about that. Just 1 more minute to see where Santiago could fix his connection issues. Okay. So I'm truly sorry about that. I think I do have the questions of the panel, and I'm going to take and maybe lead this session as a temporary moderator in case Santiago joins back. And fortunately, these are the pairs of these kind of events. But let's try to catch up with the content. And okay, here you are.
Okay, here you are.
Yes,
Sorry about this technical issue. Okay.
Go ahead.
Well, thank you, Juan Manuel. Thank you, Ignacio. Thank you, Marco Aurelio. Thank you, Angela. The idea with this panel is to have a conversation about the different aspects of socioeconomic value and user-centered models in Latin America. So I have prepared a set of questions, but I like to start with the first one, and it's something regarding peer-to-peer models in North America and also in Latin America. Why it's important for Latin America to promote this type of models, and how is it different to what we have in Europe or in North America? I don't know if maybe Marco Aurelio wants to answer this first question.
First, thank you, Santiago, and thank you for the invitation. And well, it's a very easy question to start. Let's see. I will talk about a little bit about Brazil. So in Brazil, we have more than 80% of our electricity matrix from renewables, mainly hydro, which is about 62%. And the others are biomass, wind, solar, and distributed generation is growing fast in Brazil. So we have already 6.3 gigawatts of distributed generation in Brazil, with 6.1 it's solar PV. So in such scenario, which is growing very fast, is not only an opportunity but also a need that we reform our current regulatory framework so that consumers may they can play a role, a special role in the system, not only a passive role, but they became a player that can sell the electricity in the market and make more great contribution for the system. But on the other side, there's a lot of challenges associated with, especially I can say about Brazil, economic, legal, regulatory system in Brazil, in my opinion, are less favorable for investors than many countries in Europe or even in US and Canada. So it's a barrier, a big barrier that we have to deal with them. And for a quick development of user-centered initiatives. So it's not easy to, let's say, import the solution from other countries, and we have to deal with our difference. And let's say in Brazil, it's a huge opportunity, and we have to face it.
Okay, so what do you think is the biggest challenge, like for the Brazilian specific situation to overcome?
Well, it's let's say nowadays it's a mix of economic and regulatory framework. So if we allow free market for everyone, and so we have to stall everything, even though the price is not competitive for storage, let's say. So we have some economic issues, and that we have to fix it, and it takes time. And the regulatory framework, on the other side, you need time to fix it or to improve. So, but we have to start, and we have already started. But this, I can say, that's the biggest two challenges that we face now.
Okay. Ignacio, so this is the same question for Marco. From your experience in Chile, how is it different, the development of these kind of schemes in Latin America than in in North America or Europe?
Thank you, Santiago. I think that the main problem probably is that Latin America, it's a medium income continent, so probably people have other needs before investing on renewables. So the big challenge here is how do we make this profitable for households? How do we make sense for them? They might or might not have conscience on the environment, but even though if we offer them a solution that it's feasible and it makes profits for them, produces savings on the electricity grid, will be better for them. So in this program that we have, the Solar House, we had a huge interest. You know, we had the program opened 2 weeks and we received around 100,000 applications on the first stage. So people is really interested, but the problem is that they want to have solar panels, but they cannot afford them. So how do we make this with an economic sense for them? That's the big challenge, I think.
Okay, and have there been any initiatives from the regulation side or from the governance side in order to promote that and to create to facilitate this access?
Well, I think that on this first stage, what we're doing is first this aggregation of demand to get better prices. So contractors tell us, for me, it's too expensive to go knocking doors. So if I have to do that, I have to charge more because I need more people. So it's good to have like a central agency like us doing that work. So if we get a good scale, we can get better prices. By better prices, I mean we've had savings of up to 35% with regards to the market price of solar panels. So that's one key point, I think. And the second one is, okay, how do we finance that? Today we have co-financing from the government, but probably it's transitory. It won't be like a long-term policy. So we have to find a way to finance this. And we are working with different banks on how to give long-term soft loan so they can pay this over 10 years or 12 years with small quotas that are lower than the savings that the partners produce. And in that case, it could be good for homeowners to invest. So that's probably the next stage.
Okay. So let's say we get to a situation where all the homeowners are able to get this, we will effectively need some government regulation to allow for the user-centered energy systems. I don't know if there's any if Latin American countries are taking the steps in the right direction. Ignacio, do you think that Chile is taking the steps on the right direction and the regulatory path it's on its way?
I think so, yes. So today, if you install a solar panel on your rooftop, you can send the excess of electricity to the grid, and you get paid for that. Also, this communitary system, it's really interesting. So you don't have to use your own rooftop. You can get together with a bunch of people, or your municipality can do that work, and you can build a small-scale solar farm, 100 kilos, 200 kilos, 300 kilos, and that's very cheap, much cheaper than doing on your rooftop, and assign, I don't know, 1 kilo or 2 kilos or 3 kilos to each household. So on that way, you can also get the benefits having solar generation and not doing changes in your house. So that's a modification on the distributed energy law that was done like 1 year ago. And now we will pilot that new regulation to see if it's sensible.
Okay, excellent. We have Angela again with us. And Angela was leading the Colombian mission on energy transformation. Angela, how is this mission important for the development of user-centered energy systems?
If previous question answers, the two answers, I can say, in addition to the heterogeneity of the consumers and the different economic situation that they have to be involved in this kind of or in this new model, there is a huge interest in Colombia to participate and start with the legal framework participation of one side in the energy market. This is part for me to understand and to solve and to be how this issue is the regulatory issue. We need more regulation in the vision that we review the missing aspects that we must define. Yes, we need more regulation. At the same time, we need less regulation. We need a regulatory framework that foster and innovation is what we need here to allow the participation of the different consumers we have in the different cost distribution companies with different limits to pay, different coverage, different state of the grid. So we have to deal with, and there is really for me a key question: how to have a regulatory framework that all these new transactions, new agents, new technologies to operate in the market, and in our case, without jeopardizing reliability, because we have also a huge participation of hydro system. So is what the mission tried to look at, and we have a huge, a bunch of proposals for this issue. We have 12 proposals that must be put in place to get the complete framework to allow that. I am to see all these pilot projects and all these case studies that could help us to define, to precisely define this framework we need. Santiago.
Okay.
I can't go into the details, but there's a lot of we have done in the mission, in the energy transformation mission related subject.
Okay, thank you. I want to send it over to Marco. Okay. I want to send it over to Marco. The mission from energy transition in Colombia was something made by a high-level government mandate, but that has to be transformed somehow in regulation, and it's the job of the regulator, such as ANEL, to effectively make this change. What are the key issues of the Brazilian regulation that you're working on right now to promote these kind of changes?
Okay, yes, we are on a lot of new regulations, and it's a hot topic right now. So I just want to complete a little bit, as presented before by Kathlen. In Brazil, consumers can share their the same power plant up to 5 megawatts. So we have around 60 megawatts of cooperative and consortia, which represent about 1% of we have of distributed generation. And we have consumers that live in residential, commercial, or industrial condominium. They have already 5 megawatts installed. It's not that much, but it's a beginning. And the regulation allows, since 2016, allows this initiative. And it's growing fast. With respect peer-to-peer energy trading, we don't have any pilot projects running, at least that I'm aware of, and the current regulation does not allow it. And we have many challenges. One challenge is the tariff, our tariff structure. So for low voltage consumers, the tariff is we call volumetric tariff. It's a flat value that consumers pay for energy and energy consumption. And if you reduce, many consumers are reducing their consumption with PV, let's say, and this creates an imbalance in the system. And so ANEEL, as a regulator, we have every year have to assess the utilities revenues, and you have to sometimes have to raise the tariff. So you have to balance this situation. This is a very complex topic everywhere, especially in a country with like Brazil and other Latin America, that you have a lot of difference in income. So if you raise the tariff, you're gonna have a negative impact in the society. So this is the challenge, a huge challenge. It's to design a tariff that, in a way, you can value the energy that is exported to the grid, because it has value, especially in some moments, not every time, but you have more the energy, you have the capacity value. And on the other hand, you have to, you cannot impact the tariff or the stability of the economic concession, the utilities. And so the challenge of the regulator is to create a balance. So it's a huge balance. And a lot of public consultation that we open, for instance, to free markets, to open the free markets for everyone. We are receiving suggestions from the stakeholders, and we have another one designed to address this new technology. Let's say we're going to talk about peer-to-peer or microgrids or demand response, storage. We have opened this public consultation and start the regulatory process. So until September, we are accepting contributions from the stakeholders, so we can build a new regulatory framework, at least for DER. So this is something that it's burning in Brazil. These questions are burning, and we are trying to address, but it takes time, but our time is getting shorter.
Yeah, I can imagine. Is there, in many places in the world, England, Australia, the Netherlands, even in Colombia, not for the energy sector, but for other kinds of sectors, the concept of the regulatory sandboxes are being applied or studied to somehow develop these new projects and actually trying to balance all the different complex issues such as the tariff and whatnot. Do you have any sandboxes in Brazil, or any idea to develop sandboxes in the near future?
Yes, we do. We don't have actually, let's say, this is the sandbox rule. We don't have it, but utilities and investors, they can apply for a sandbox. So we, as ANEEL, we can assess and we can give permission. Let's say we have currently we have a sandbox that for microgrids. So a utility in South Brazil, they want to build a microgrid to improve the reliability So they're gonna hire distributed generation, not small distributed generation, but let's say from 1 to 30 megawatts. But this distributed generation must be connected in certain substations that they need. And we created this environment, or this sandbox, so this program can run for 5 years. Yes, it's one example. Another example, we are building a sandbox for a new tariff. So probably until the end of the year, we're gonna, ANEEL will open this sandbox for dynamic tariffs, trying to test with small consumers. Yes, we do have this one. We don't have yet one for peer-to-peer, but we are open to project. Yeah, but it's like a case-to-case assessment.
Okay, excellent. I want to make to ask a question for the audience. Arina Kuzmic asks if there are any incentives or funding in South America to encourage both companies, organizations to develop or electrify pure communities. That's poverty is a huge issue in Latin America and creates revenues for them. Ignacio, you were talking about the finance challenges in Chile. Can you answer Alina's question? Are there any incentives or funding to develop and electrify poor communities?
Yeah, sure. So what we have in Chile is this program to co-finance solar rooftops. That's what we have. And in that case, we give a co-financing between 20 and 50%, depending on the value of the house. So if the house is more expensive, they receive lower subsidy. But that's what we have in Chile.
Okay. Marco, in Brazil, do you have any incentives or funding to electrify, for instance, favelas or other poor communities in Brazil, and also to create revenues?
Well, we have many different actions. Let's say we have a law that it's our utilities distribution company, they must provide electricity to low-income consumers or everyone in the country. So it's a process that started 10 years ago, more, almost 20 years ago, and it's growing. So everyone must have access to electricity. Even in the Amazon region, they must have any kind of electricity. It's a law. So let's say nowadays 99% of the country it's electrified. It's one point. The other, there are utilities must invest at least 0.5% of their revenue in energy efficiency program, and inside this program, they have to invest. I'm not sure about the percentage, but they must invest a lot of money in low-income communities to improve the energy efficiency, and they can even install PV system. And this is one action that have been done for many years. There are another law that utilities can install, let's say, a PV in a public building, and if they use this excess of energy inside the distributed generation room, now it's a very new law. It's 3 months ago. They have to choose low-income consumers to receive this credit in energy. So a public building with a PV, let's say, that was financed by public funding, they will receive this credit in order to reduce their energy bill. So there are many activities. There are funding around, but I would say that it's not that easy. It's not that it's not easy to get this money but you have many initiatives. And the most one is, it's a law that everyone must have electricity in the country. That's, you have to do.
Okay. Okay, I want us to picture ourselves maybe in 7 to 10 years. And how do you picture Latin America in terms of user-centered energy models? And what were the steps that we took to get there? I don't know if Angela can hear us right now. I would love to have her inputs on this issue. Angela, I think you're in mute right now. We can hear you. I think we're having some mic or sound issues with Angela. She has to unmute. Well, on the meantime, while Angela solves her sound issues, maybe Ignacio, how did we get there? And picture ourselves in 7 to 10 years in Latin America. Did we transform our system to have user-centered models? And what were the necessary steps we needed to get there?
Okay, that's an interesting. You know, we had last year, or in 2019, we had a big discussion about the digitalization of the electric network, especially about the intelligent meters at homes. Okay, so there was a plan to replace all the meters, and people should have paid them in the account monthly, and it was a huge mess. And people started complaining about this, and basically it's because for most of the population today in Chile, it's senseless to have an intelligent meter to do energy management. I mean, if you have on your house a TV, a fridge, and a few light bulbs, it's not much that you can do, okay? So here there is a big challenge, in Chile at least, on how do we electrify the consumption. So in Chile, people uses firewood in the south for heating, and it's very pollutant, and it's a lot of CO2, particulated material. So as long as we can start electrifying the consumption, electrifying the heating, it will be much more sensible to start using or massificating solar panels, to do energy demand management, to have different prices at different hours. But it's a long process. Today, for like high-income people in Santiago or in other cities, could be great to have batteries at home, to do management, to have different rates, to have solar panels, but for the massive of the population, not yet. And it's a process that will be in place in the next decade, hopefully.
Okay. I see we have Juan Carlos with us. We were having technical issues to connect him. Juan Carlos,
Yeah,
how are
sorry.
you?
How are you? Thank you very much. Sorry for the issues.
No, don't you worry. When we are imagining ourselves from 7 to 10 years where the user-centered models are part of the energy system as a whole, what are the necessary steps we need to take that? And in your particular case, working for XM, the Colombian electric market operator, how do you think you're going to be transformed in the next few years in order to interact with user-centered systems and interact directly with prosumers?
Yeah, sure. Actually, we think that the system will be changed more than in the last 100 years, in the future 5 years for sure. It's necessary to transform the current passive energy consumer into an active consumer that, regardless of its size, can participate in peer-to-peer markets, flexibility and capacity markets. To achieve this, a lot of work has to be done, not only in technology and regulatory issues also are crucial to work on knowledge and culture of the users and provide easily accessible information for all of them. Sure, we think that these topics are essential in this area, Santiago.
Okay, and what are the actions that you're taking on XM right now, or what are the things you are looking at as the next step in order to start changing the energy systems?
Yeah, sure. We have working. We have worked in a lot of topics. For instance, we have a laboratory which is in which allows our to introduce new topics in our system, like, for instance, have hardware in the loop, and also to work in hybrid system in order to introduce different topics of our coordination and how can we have relationship between us and DSOs in the future.
Oh, okay, thank you. I think Angela is back. Angela, there are some necessary steps the mission for energy transformation proposed for Colombia. Can you walk us through those steps of those initiatives?
Okay, we have now a roadmap, and we have identified based on the work of the experts, national and international, that I can read very, okay? One, incorporation of distributed energy resources, that is in charge of the Ministry of Energy and UPE are working on that. Second one is the advanced metering infrastructure. It was in charge of the commission, but has an article the deployment of this infrastructure. We have also recommendations efficient demands, the type of participation that the consumer could, for example, in the spot market, in the relative market, through an, for example, in the services market, distribution utility. Or we have a recommendation to move from to move the regulation to more oriented to results-based regulation, and to instead of CAPEX and OPEX. Or recommendation, there is a recommendation of the criteria for grid planning, for the planning and the consideration of these distributed energy resources in the expansion plans. There is also a recommendation that is work by Craig that to increase visibility and transparency of distribution. Then we aim for the trade of grid services. Then we have a proposal of a new regulated tariffs, as Aurelio told before, that to move this metric signal to more detailed signal for energy, guarantee of supply, network use. And finally, we have described the new of the discos and how distribution to become an operator. The pillar of foundation first, the sandbox tourism board that could be phone 1715, and also we have the suggestion to have 2 new agents in the market, the aggregators, one, and second, an agent that could manage the information of this digitalization of the sector and allow the information to be used, but the people that need this kind of information, as it is not compromise the and third, we have a main study that is the vertical disintegration of the industry, mainly shown from commercialization. Agents ask us to design or to think of a study to show or to prove that this integration is needed, this new market, liberalized market that we are aiming at. That's it, Santiago. Sorry for the time I take.
Okay, no, don't you worry. We're running a bit late, so I want to make the last question for everyone. Just in a very 30-second at most answer. What is the issue on user-centered energy systems that keeps you awake at night? What is the thing that we should be addressing right now? Ignacio, maybe?
Okay, so I think it's a scale problem. How do we massify this? And it cannot be only through subsidies. So we have to find out an economic model that makes sense for everyone to invest on renewables, on energy efficiency on their own, with a right, full-placed regulatory framework that allows them to invest and to get the benefits of the investment. That's it.
Okay. Marco, what's the things that keeps you awake at night?
Well, actually not that much, but during the day, I have some issues that I thinking every day. I'm an electrical engineer, so I have to say a little bit about the technical issues that, despite all the benefits that DER can provide to the customer and to the grid, which we have no doubt about this, but we have to. I'm really concerned about a massive and uncoordinated behind the metering energy resource, distributed energy resource, without correct price signals. And this might lead to technical issues to the grid. And our independent system operator, ONS in Portuguese, and they have already made a study, and we are working together, ANEL and ONS. We are working together to start a new research and development project in order to study this impact, because they have simulated many scenarios, and this is similar in Australia. The independent operators did the same, and because you have a risk of mass blackout. You can have a mass disconnection of all the system. If you have an event in the transmission network, let's say a large unit generation, you lose this generation. You have problems with the variation in the frequency or in the voltage, and this can contaminate all the distribution grid. And the inverter is not the protection setting of the inverter. They don't deal well with this variation, so the system will trip, and you lose all this generation, and all of a sudden you became the house became not a generator, it became a load, and this unbalance on the grid, it's a challenge. So this point, it's something that I'm really concerned, but as an engineer, I can say that you can fix it, but it takes time and cost. That's it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Juan Carlos, from the system operator standpoint, what is the key issue that it's concerning you right now?
Yeah, I agree with Marco in order that in the morning or during the day, I think poorly designed energy policies and technologies that don't satisfy user needs lead to performance gaps that are both energy and economically inefficient. We have to learn about the experiences abroad and apply the best practices in Colombia. New challenges arise related to the system operation mainly because of the uncertainty in the production and consumption of energy. DRs and non-conventional renewable energy will be increasing the level of real-time coordination between the ISO and DSOs and new agents like aggregators. This coordination is the key to avoid network congestion, double counting, and define the capacity for the participation of prosumers in the future. Technological improvements should be done to prevent operative issues related with frequency and voltage control that may come up due to the reduction in the system inertia and congestion in the distribution networks. For us as system operators, it's relevant to have visibility of DRs since they can impact the system reliability and to guarantee that the DR fulfill technical requirements in such a way that the quality levels of the Colombian power system remain at the current ones, I think.
Okay. Thank you. And Angela, from your work at the mission and everything you've been studied for the last few past years, what do you think is the main issue that Latin America should tackle right now? Well, I think we lost Angela again. Well, thank you, everyone. We're a bit behind on schedule. I want to thank you for this very interesting conversation. And now we're moving ahead with the last part of the event. It's the closure by Professor Shipworth. Thanks.
Thank you.
Right. Hello, and thank you to everybody. I'll be very brief. We are running over. So I think what I'd just like to do is firstly just...
Yes. Hey, Dave, please go ahead.
Everyone, yeah, thank you. So I'm really just going to say thank you, particularly to our organizers at EIA University for the work that's gone into and hosting this, and then to all of our speakers. So I think we've had a great lineup of speakers. One thing I was intending to do is try to synthesize some thoughts coming out of today. I will do that, and I'll just put together a brief summary and circulate it to participants. But I think very, very simply, I think one of the key observations from my perspective is that no area in the world has come close to understanding the challenges and all of the solutions that we need to actually increase consumer participation whilst managing the issues and challenges that will arise. So I think that from my perspective, this points very firmly to a need for international collaboration. There are clearly areas where Latin America has in many ways is well ahead in terms of penetration of renewables, in terms of understanding the implications of potentially very long grids, dealing with implications of the microgrids back into main grids. But they face very similar challenges. So we are all trying to understand how to construct consumer value, because ultimately we want people to allow us to use or at least for them to engage in the use of their personal assets in terms of generation and storage to help us make the grid work as efficiently as possible. So I think there's a lot of lessons. We will capture those. This is very much core to the work of the Global Observatory on peer-to-peer, which many people are going on to an internal working meeting of that tomorrow. We deal with all of these issues, and as you'll have heard from some of our subtask leaders, we are deep into the technicalities of making these systems work. And I commend to all people the literature reviews that are coming out of our subtasks. There is some world-leading findings emerging about both the opportunities and the challenges of making this work. So with that, I would like to basically hand back to Juan Pablo, and allow them to wrap up for the day. So thank you, Juan Manuel. Back to you.
For these closure remarks, we're looking forward to receiving these written words for us to analyze, reflect on the presentations from today, which I agree were very interesting and very exciting from a Latin American perspective to see how this becomes in something important and relevant for the markets and for regulation for each country, and at some point hopefully to become a way to integrate among countries. So just for finalizing our session for today, I would like to invite you all to participate in this final networking session. I want to remind you that the floor is going to be open for 40 more minutes, and hopefully you can use this time to connect with other participants. I want to thank all the participants for your patience today with some technical issues and for taking a bit longer than usual. I think we all agree that the discussion was all the discussions were very interesting. So I think it was worth it. So without any further words, thank you all again, and see you soon.